Booth World Industries took the internet by storm back in the early 2010s, all with a single post to r/nosleep. The story was entitled 630-296-7536 and covers one man's bizarre experience with a seemingly innocuous phone call. The spark news is that after moving into his new cabin, our narrator, who we will call Jim, receives a call that he believes is the plumber. After a brief hold, Jim is connected with Samantha, who introduces him to Booth World Industries and asks for a name. Jim replies as anyone would with his name, except she says the following bizarre sentence: "We know who you are. I'm your operator. Please give me a name to access." Jim is now incredibly confused, so he decides to give a fake name, which she immediately calls bogus upon and says that fake names cannot be used. Jim asks, used for what? At which point, Jim is met with this iconic one-word answer: remodeling. Still thinking this has to do with his cabin, Jim continues and gives the name of his ex-girlfriend, Jessica Goodwin. Jim is then given the date of August 21st, 2015 for Samantha's remodeling appointment and is asked if he'd like to reschedule, which he does for later that day at 3 p.m. Jim is then asked if he'd like a courtesy call, to which he answers yes. Jim then fills us in by telling us that Jessica is his ex and that he harbors a lot of ill will for her. So when he receives a call at precisely 3 p.m., he begins to smile as he hears Jessica begging for her life and taking her last breath on the other side of the phone. After this, the story takes a turn as we learn that Jim himself has been scheduled for remodeling in just a few days and can only escape by recruiting 1,000 people to become Booth World members, which is obviously a basically impossible task, and as such, Jim would never be heard from again. This post would be his swan song, the last hurrah, a hill to die on, and ironically, all that's left of him. Now, this story is so good, and it caused a ton of division in its day, with people searching to find verifiable evidence of its truthfulness or its falsity. But to this day, there isn't really anything that sways it either way. People have both claimed to be its creator and claimed that it's all made up. But the phone records prove that the number does exist, and there are filings for such a business as Booth World Industries. Additionally, over the years, countless folks have dialed those divisive digits and received a diabolical diatribe from a direful drone. And the stories from these people who have dialed the number basically boil down to one of three things: no one picks up, I was sent to voicemail, or on very rare occasions, someone actually picks up. So for the sake of getting to the bottom of this, I gave the number a dial myself and was met with this:
"If you feel you have reached this recording in error, please check the number and try your call again."
But thanks to the internet, we know that it was once something a little bit more like this when you dialed the number.
You have reached Booth World Industries. Your number has been logged and traced. A service representative will be with you shortly for remodeling.
Which means that it would unfortunately seem that the answers to this once front page mystery are now forever buried in obscurity. So whether or not this is true is up to you. Let me know what you think in the comments below. An arcade game named Berserk would become nefarious for its role in the death of a young man named Peter Bukowski in the 1980s. A young man who was physically fit, active, had friends, no medical conditions, and who had a particular enjoyment for the arcade. Peter was a man of his time. That was until at 8 p.m. when Peter moseyed down to the arcade and headed for Berserk, which according to the arcade's owner was Peter's favorite game to play. After about 25 minutes and 2 high scores, Peter was just getting his day started, except as he entered his initials into the all-time high scoreboard, he collapsed. Within minutes, the ambulance had arrived and everything possible was done for Peter, but by the time he got to the hospital, he was pronounced dead on arrival. Peter's death struck his community and the gaming community at large, with many arcade owners removing the game from their premises. Before we continue about Peter's death, though, there is some necessity to understand the game Berserk. Like many arcade games of its time, it was pretty simple. Essentially, it boils down to killing robots and advancing to the next level. Now, in the process of killing these robots, if you take too much time, a monster named Evil Otto will appear, who is just a smiley face that follows you around. You can't kill him, and he'll chase you until you advance to the next level. And what brought this connection between Peter's death and the game to another level was when people realized that Evil Otto, who is just a smiley face, looks eerily similar to the water towers in Peter's hometown, which are all painted with smiley faces. People then and people now still find this connection very weird, and something I noticed is that whenever you kill a robot, it also breaks into the same smiley face, which I thought was a little creepy. Now, Peter's death brought up some interesting research, and it was uncovered that several months prior, a young man named Jeffrey Daly had also died while playing Berserk. Shortly after completing his new high score round, as he was inputting his initials into the game, Jeffrey fell to the ground, dying instantaneously. Most alarmingly, it's reported that Jeffrey's final score was 16,660, a little finding which I think may be just too much to ignore. Although we are certain of Peter's death, Jeffrey's is a little bit different, and there is very little to no reliable information about the life or death of Jeffrey Daly, and most of the information seems to come from this one arcade game website. However, whether or not Jeffrey's part of this story is true, it is undeniable that it has had a major impact on the lore of the game Berserk. But Berserk and Evil Otto wouldn't stop at 2 lives, they would increase their number to a third, with Edward Clark Jr. being our final death toll. In seemingly dark irony, Edward would enter the same arcade where Peter had died 6 years prior, and on that day he had noticed that there were some free coins standing atop the Berserk console. So he headed over, like anyone would, and began playing, inserting one of the free coins. A few minutes later, however, a 16-year-old named Pedro Roberts walked over and began harassing him, claiming that the coins belonged to him. Fighting erupted and Pedro was thrown out, while Edward was held for 10 minutes to wait for his own safety until Pedro was out of distance. And when the security let Edward out, they told him to walk in the opposite direction that Pedro had taken to avoid any more fighting. However, Edward did not listen and instead took his usual route home. And just a short bit down this road, Pedro was waiting in an alley where he stabbed Edward to death. Now, this all makes for a pretty convincing story, but for the sake of honesty, I have to tell you that, according to the autopsy, Peter had a previously unknown heart condition that was likely ignited by the day's events, including his multiple miles walk to the arcade that day and the caffeine-laden soda he had stopped for along the way. And while this is highly probable, I would really need to read the medical records for myself because it's almost hard to believe that, considering we were told that Peter was physically fit, and this walk to the arcade would have been nothing new for him. So unlike some of the other videos I've seen, I'm a little hesitant to dive straight into the notion that this is either real or fake. Instead, I'm going to leave this one up to you all. 112 Dirtbag. This is a topic that has fascinated me since well before I ever started making internet mystery videos, but I've never actually had a great place to talk about it until now. 112 Dirtbag is the name of a since-deleted, bizarre YouTube channel that has direct connections to the disappearance of Mara Murray. For context, on February 9th, 2004, Mara was last seen by a bus driver who spotted her by the side of the road with a wrecked car. It was evident that she had run off the road, and the car had suffered considerable damage, but despite her helpless state, Mara refused to accept any help from the bus driver when he offered it to her. In fact, Mara begged him not to call the cops, claiming that she had already called AAA. This was 7:27 p.m., and although hesitant to leave a young woman in the dark by the side of the road, the driver pulled away nonetheless. But just a bit down the road, his conscience got to him and he decided to call the cops anyway. However, when they arrived only 19 minutes later, Mara was gone, leaving that kind gentleman to be the last person to ever see Mara alive. Now, the Mara mystery is extremely interesting, and there's a ton of suspicious behavior from Mara and others that I would love to get into sometime, and if you guys were curious, let me know in the comments below. I would truly be down to make a video on that. However, for now, we're going to focus on 112 Dirtbag, the gentleman who inspired this entry. Dirtbag is most well known for his infamous video entitled Happy Anniversary, which dropped in February of 2011. This video is eerie in and of itself, involving much laughing and erratic behavior, but what elevated it to the next level and got it so much attention at the time are the hidden messages that users began to uncover. The first being his name. The number 112 matches with Route 112 in Woodsville, New Hampshire, where Mara's car was found and she was last seen alive. The second part of the name, Dirtbag, correlates to an interview done with Mara's father, where he refers to whoever harmed his daughter as a dirtbag. And to bring it home, the video was posted on the 8-year anniversary of Mara's disappearance. However, the mystery continues into other uploads, such as this one, where we get an innocuous picture of a ticket to the Bretton Woods ski resort. Upon a closer look, we see that the ticket was issued just 2 days after Mara's disappearance, and most interestingly, the Bretton Woods ski resort is less than an hour drive from where Mara went missing. However, what I find most telling about these uploads is the third, entitled No Hope for Mental Wannabe, which for the most part is just him playing music, for the last few seconds of which reveals some incredibly incriminating information. Interestingly, the video was taken down shortly after it was posted. In the video, we are shown an image of a strange shape, 4 numbers, and a super scuffed drawing of a face. Thanks to an author named James Renner, who wrote a book discussing this case, we actually linked this random picture to something pretty concrete that we discussed earlier. What Renner points out in his book is that the shape is generally similar to that of the main building on the Bretton Woods property, and on top of that, the numbers correlate to some of the ski slopes and other attractions on the property. Now, in addition to being a skiing resort, Bretton Woods is also known for its pretty stunning golf course. What James Renner points out is that the face corresponds pretty closely to a portion of the golf course. This is extremely interesting because the golf course is divided into multiple segments on the map. Now, something I never thought would come in handy in an internet mystery video is about to. I've been on golf courses since I was a little munchkin and even worked at ours for 2 summers in a row. So from this, I've gotten a pretty clear idea of the entire process of golf course management and the typical procedures. So as I began to read about the murder and the map connection, I realized that in the case of dumping a body, a golf course might actually be one of the perfect places to do it. And here are my reasons why. There are typically no lights on a traditional golf course, as they would be considered an eyesore and contribute to light pollution. Additionally, it discourages night golfing, which is actually something that happens and forces players to leave when the course closes. As such, golf courses are pitch black at night and are completely devoid of people, which gives golf courses 1 gold star for body dumping. Additionally, when designing a golf course, you typically want to maintain as much of the natural surroundings as possible. It adds to the scenery and it makes it feel a little less invasive, which means that in many golf courses, the Breton Woods included, there are often considerably large patches of trees and bushes around holes that are large enough to dig a hole that would go unnoticed. I know this because part of my job was to collect balls from these woods, but I absolutely refuse to do that for several reasons. 1, it's terrifying at any time of day, but especially dusk. 2, there are snakes everywhere. And 3, we have bears. I say all of this to add credence to the notion that a body could be buried at a golf course and remain entirely unnoticed to groundskeepers or any other employees, because in those patches of forests, no one goes. But back to Dirtbag, because he doesn't leave us here. In one of the frames, the eye blinks, suggesting that Morrow's body is hidden somewhere near the corresponding hole. But all of this theorizing is for nothing, because not only did the cops never check into the golf course theory, they also barely even looked into Dirtbag himself. Supposedly, according to popular theory, he was looked into and checked out, and it was uncovered that he was just some weird guy wanting to involve himself in the investigation. But I find that hard to believe. The lengths he went to create these riddles seem like the kind of thing a serial killer would do, leaving little hints about what he had done. So until I'm proven completely wrong or right, I'm going to forever believe that Dirtbag 112 is much more involved in this than anyone even knows. As an urban explorer myself, I'm always a sucker for a good urbex mystery, and this next one doesn't disappoint and is probably one of my favorites on the internet. When you first open his story, you're met with a truly intriguing yet exceptionally long essay describing the events, and I totally recommend reading through it. It is fascinating, but for the sake of our purposes, I'm going to shorten it down to the gist. A user who we shall name James, along with a few friends, noticed an anomalous manhole cover placed on a bridge, and like all good things, it began right there. They decided to come back in a few hours with all the tools they needed, and since they lived in North Wales, UK, there's really nothing to do, so this seemed like a great opportunity. And after prying it open, they headed down and were met with a claustrophobia-inducing crawl space overlooking a highway. And moving deeper into the tunnel system, things began to open up and the darkness began to creep in. So much so that had they not brought flashlights, it would have been literally pitch black. As they moved deeper and explored this fascinating edifice, they began to see what no urban explorer ever wants to see: signs of life, including some utterly disgusting images from decades-old magazines and a jerry-rigged mattress. Moving further forward, the signs of life became progressively more evident as they noticed candles and trash strewn about. But the crowning jewel was easily what James described as a blood-drenched condom and a fold-out chair simply sitting in the center of one of the large openings. At this, our posse engaged in a tactical nope and left as fast as they could. And I can personally attest, no one wants to be the last guy out in something like that. As such, once they finally made it out, they all vowed to never return, believing they had just barely escaped with their lives. However, our friend OP was a little less adamant about never returning, and with the attention his story got, how could he resist? So finding a less cowardly group of friends, he made a return trip into the dungeon beneath the bridge, this time managing to document via photograph his entire trip. I want to warn you to be cognizant when you look at these photos. They are very disgusting, and some of them include images, so please be warned. After retracing his steps all the way back to where his previous journey had ended, James arrived at the final boss of this whole tale. In the last images, James would deliver us what is now an iconic photo with the chair on full display as it stares into the abyss, leaving us all to this day to ask who sits there, why do they sit there, and are they still there, perhaps peeping from just around the corner, staring out from the darkness, wondering why all these people are in his home. Let me know what you think in the comments below, which is most interesting to you and which keeps you up at night wondering what happened. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one and hearing all your thoughts. I want you guys to genuinely know that I appreciate every single one of your comments, even the hateful ones, because boy, do I get a good laugh out of those. But for now, though, I just want you guys to know that I appreciate all the support of my videos, and I want to give a special shout out today to the 2 guys on Telegram who always send each other my videos and watch 100% of them. I really appreciate it, and I do see you out there. Y'all are the best. And to each and every single one of you, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate you and all the support you've been giving my channel. Thank you guys for 2,000 subscribers, and I'm so excited to see where this all goes. As of now, I'm also planning a very, very special Halloween video that you guys truly will not forget forget. Until that time, though, thank you guys so much for watching, and I cannot wait to see you in the next one.